Welcome to Song of Spice and Rhani, a Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire podcast for the girls, the gays, the theys, and the well-behaved straights. I am your host, Rhani.
And I'm your host, Spicer.
And every single week we will be going over 3 chapters from the Song of Ice and Fire book series, talking about what happens, the lore, theories, and our favorite deaths. How is death treating you today, Spicer?
She's coming for us all.
Sure.
I know she's breathing down our necks, and sometimes it is unexpected, and your favorite character dies, and then you move on with it, and you're stronger because.
Yeah, and that probably happened to you this week with, nameless Dagger Man, and I sympathize with you. I know how much he meant to you and your journey and your personal identification with him.
I said personal Dagger Man or nameless Dagger Man with no personality. Where art thou? I cry. I cry.
I'm so sorry. Also, natural pivot to something I haven't been prompted to say. Where have you been this past week, Spicer?
I was on a cruise. I sailed the summer seas. I went to the summer isles. I went to Yi Ti. I traded valuable spices and herbs. I came back to Westeros, a rich man. I went on a cruise.
I'm sorry, that was the joke. That was the prepared joke.
It was. I thought about that on the cruise ship. I'm like, oh, that'll be funny. That'll be funny.
You know what? I was there. I was with you for a little bit. I was like, oh, you remember the geography a little bit. Yes, Summer Isles, the Caribbean. Yes, that is correct. Well done. And then we started adding ET, which is the China stand-in. And I was like, oh, okay. And then you were trading spices? Like you're the East India Trading Company? The colonists? Really, like we started so strong. It was so promising. And we just had to stop. We had to stop. But no, we barreled through. We barreled through and said, no, for crown and country, the queen shall rise again. Jesus Christ.
I thought it was a great joke. I thought it was a great
Audience, vote in the poll. This will be the poll for this week. How did you feel about Spicer's joke? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel offended? Do you feel like colonization was glorified by this evil bald white man? Or did you think it was funny? Please.
It's a funny joke. It was a funny joke. Oh my god. Oh my god.
This is what you get for preparing material.
This is why I just need to come in like I usually am and just shoot from the hip, because if I prepare stuff, then Rhani tears me down. Anyways, it's not like I have to prepared every week. Anyways, it's fine. Anyway, let's do it.
Let's get going. Okay, so this week we did our 3 chapters. We did Eddard II, Tyrion II, and Catlyn III. So let us, of course, begin with Eddard II and a little synopsis of what happened. So the king and all of his merry company who are heading back down to King's Landing they're on the wild country roads of the north. They're in wild country. Ooh, Eddard,
the highway to hell.
Yeah, that. but Eddard and Robert, they decide to go off on their own for a little bit. Well, Robert decides, and Eddard has to listen because he's just stuck with his bro friend from high school that he hasn't been able to outgrow. But Robert takes him off to the side, and they starts doing the whole hey, remember how good the high school days were? Let's reminisce on that because we're 35-year-old men and we're sad. Except Eddard isn't sad. Robert's the sad one. But yeah, and then we get some little interesting lore dumps about history, about Robert's rebellion, about the Aegon's conquest, and then eventually they discuss the fact that from across the narrow sea, they've heard a tell from Varys that Daenerys Targaryen has wed Khal Drogo, and ooh, the scary ramifications of that. Robert wants to off the young child, and Eddard is like, what if we don't kill children? Weird. And yeah, eventually they kind of agree to disagree, and they go off and they keep riding down the country road. What'd you think, Spicer?
I mean, it's really the classic foreign policy question. Do we kill the children or do we not kill the children? It's truly a trolley problem. Do we kill the children or do we not kill the children? And Eddard Stark takes the controversial opinion of what if we didn't kill children? There's That's not relevant at all. Anyways, back to
Nope.
fantasy. Uh,
Yeah, the made up shit.
oh my gosh. I will say, I the first thing I wrote is Robert back on his bullshit again. Like,
Same. The first thing I wrote, Robert, just a dad having a midlife crisis. So
the line he said, "Us two knights on the open road, nothing but our swords and our horses." I'm like, girl, give it up, give it up, Mary. It it never was there. You never were there. You're
no.
never going to be there. Like, you are the fucking king. You can do whatever you want. And you're like the open highway before. What is this John Wayne 1963 Western that you are picturing? He would be such a John Wayne fan. He'd be like a,
Oh, totally.
he'd be like a spaghetti Western
And
dad.
he makes all the kids watch the movies with him.
That was my dad.
Joffrey's in the corner.
That was my dad. My dad, no, I'm not shitting you. We would, because my dad would channel surf like every dad would, and then he would find a Western and he'd be like, "Oh, this is a classic." And he'd like sit there, and it always was in the middle. It was always in the middle of the movie. We never started the movie at the beginning. It was
No.
always in the middle. So he would like explain what happened, and he'd be always like, "Oh, this is a great part," and like someone gets shot in like some terrible way. And I'm like, "How is this the great part?" Anyways, I do love Westerns though. That's another story. Um, but
But no, I agree with you though, because again, my first note was after he's having a midlife crisis. Robert, I hate my wife and my family. I just want to leave. I have so much adventure in me. With what I got in me, I could have been
would have been greater than any of you. That wouldn't be like
I had a dream.
Guys, it was only a matter of time before Gypsy crept its way in. That is about 50% of our conversation is quoting that musical to each other.
But really, just Robert Baratheon giving his best Mama Rose, just like with what I got in me, I could have been. Yeah, no, it's so much. It's so much. Robert has not, I think, lived in the present for these past 15 years. Basically, he offed a Rhaegar Targaryen on the Trident and went, "This is it. I peaked. This is. I love it."
He peaked very young. The other thing similar to what you said, another note I wrote is Robert is that one high school jock that everyone can't help but like. He's so charming that he just fooled his way into a leadership gig as an adult, but has none of the expertise or talent needed to do it. So he just surrounds himself with others to take care of it for him. Like,
Yeah. Well done.
like,
Yeah, no, that's it. That's who he is.
like he has no talent. And like that's kind of the tragedy is like he has no talent or expertise to be king. Like he's not
No.
a bad king in the sense of like he's making like really really terrible decisions. Like and he is wise enough to be like let me find people to like help me do this, right? Like let me that's why he didn't get rid of Viserys because he's like or
Varys.
Varys, sorry, too many V names. Right, like he's like, well, this guy might actually be helpful down the road, and like let me surround myself with John Aaron because like he's a level head and blah 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 blah, and now he's like let me get Ned Stark because he's like the only person in the Seven Kingdoms who has a conscience left.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he's not he doesn't
He's
mean
not cruel.
he's not cruel. Like he wants to do good, he just can't do it. Like he's
Yeah.
just really bad at being a leadership role, but he's stumbled his way because he is charming and he has some claim to the throne. And now he's like, well, fuck, I'm in charge of 7 kingdoms now. Who hey everyone, can you take care of it for me? Which like in some ways is like a good leadership skill of like knowing like where you have faults, right? And like who to help shore that up. The problem is he has no good aspects. Like
No, he's and like the issue is he like you're saying he is so disinterested with this type of work, and like he has so little impulse control that like when he doesn't want to do it, he's not going to do it. He's that ADHD kid who like you're telling him to like sit down and do your homework, and he wants to do anything but it's okay because mommy and daddy are over his shoulder like doing it for him. The only issue with that, of course, being like when people are doing things that are wrong, that are doing things that aren't for the like betterment of the country, he's not going to notice because he doesn't pay attention to shit. So like something that we will hear about, I don't, this isn't like spoilery, like the crown spends too much money. and they spend too much money, and they're enabled by like Littlefinger because he makes it work every time, and Robert doesn't ask questions, but he should ask questions because this is going to cause problems
Where are you
further
getting
down the
that?
road.
Yeah, where are you getting that money from, Littlefinger?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Where's that money coming from? Like,
So that's like the issue with Robert is like he isn't actively causing harm to the realm, like again in an active way, but passively he is, because he's allowing like situations to build up around him because he's not paying attention to any of it. And also I should clarify, earlier I said Robert isn't cruel. I mean like generally cruel in the sense of like the Mad King, like
yeah.
you know,
He's not burning
killing
people
scores
alive.
and scores of people. Yes, he is shitty to the people in his immediate vicinity. Let's be very clear about that. But yeah, so it's a pickle.
Well, it's a pickle. It's also just an interesting critique that George is doing with the concept of power and like in any sort of system where like power is vested in a singular person, whether it's a monarchy or not. Maybe like our current system right now, where like one particular position has just accrued all of this power, and to basically win this position, you just need to win a popularity contest. And like all the lords and ladies like just have to like you, or you have to fight the best, you have to have the biggest army or whatever, which in order to have the biggest army you have to have people like you, and Robert is very good at making people like him. Like he's a very like fun, amiable guy. But the problem is in systems like that where it's just a fucking popularity contest, you run into problems like this where suddenly people come into power who are either kind of disinterested in like the day-to-day governance of a country, so they hand it over to, I don't know, a multi-billionaire tech oligarch who wants to slowly dismantle aspects of said government to benefit himself and his electric car company. This is about fantasy still, right? Like
yeah, sure, totally.
But like that's, and like it's a very interesting. Once again, this was written like what, 94, just eerily, prescient. Once again, all the people who are like, this has nothing to do with politics. I'm like, my brother in Christ.
All of it, the whole thing,
the whole thing. I also said like but Rob and Ned's relationship is so pure. Like the jokes that they said of, he's like, I can't stand that wagon, I'll light it on fire, and Ned's like, I'll hand you the torch, right? Like they are bros.
It's sweet. Yeah, no, they are totally bros, and it is like, I think a sweet example of a friendship that kind of has endured both like time and like events because it's very interesting their whole dynamic, because they were both like wards of Jon Arryn growing up, so they grew up together like literally as like brothers with their surrogate dad, and then beyond that being the great bonding of their lives, then were put through a very traumatic event together, which further bonded them, and then they kind of split apart, and now they're like coming back together. So there is like kind of this tragedy in it, but there are issues, there are now roadblocks kind of in the way that are rough. Something that I wanted to talk about kind of on this subject, because I feel like this chapter is like the first one where we get like a really big indication of it, is the youth of these characters, because we often talk about like how in the TV show the children were all aged up, which like I get it. I think it was a good thing in a lot of respects. But another thing that I think people kind of miss is the adults were also aged up quite a bit, because these guys, Robert and Ned, are like 35, and
they're our age, Rhani.
No, they're not. Okay, hey, I am barely at the beginning of my 30s. How fucking dare you, you fucking liar. Hush your face. And I'm gonna steamroll past this. Maybe I'll cut it later. But anyway, all the adults are in their like mid to early 30s, and Robert's Rebellion was 15 years ago. So you do the math. All of these adult characters, when this rebellion was happening, they were between like the ages of like 17 and 20. They were either teenagers or very impressionable young adults who were all mass traumatized by the same event. And you see that like playing out in all of these different aspects. Like Robert is trapped in like his persona from when he was 20 in that age. He's like stuck mentally in that space because like it fucks you up. I don't know.
One of the lines I wrote down there were a couple of lines in this chapter that I loved that I wrote down, and one of them was, "You were never the boy you were." Like, that's a good line. Like, of just like you never were this thing that you thought you were, Rob. Like because your childhood was robbed from you. Like your young adulthood was robbed from you, and like you aren't this person that you thought you were. Like, and that's okay. It's also interesting because like Ned's the only one who I think has been able to sort of like cope and accept what happens to him, which is why he's, you know, like a fully realized adult. Everyone else isn't. Well, and it also sort of makes the rebellion make more sense logically, because like there was that scene that happens later in this chapter where like Ned's son, the oldest, Rob. Yeah, another Robert, like acts out like very stupidly, and like the his like captain at arms is like, shut the fuck up, like what are you doing? Yes. And it's like, oh well, the problem is when this rebellion happened, you had a bunch of 18-year-old boys who all like freaked the fuck out naturally for good reason, but there wasn't anyone, because literally all the adults have been killed by the king. So like there wasn't anyone to be like, temper your anger, like we'll deal with this another way. They're like, no, we're not. We're gonna march an army down south and we're going to kill them all. Like, so it's like it makes a lot more sense. Like the ages of these characters, their actions, like you said, like make more sense in the books when you sort of take into consideration that they're only 35. Like, like they have a lot of kids, but like there's 35-year-olds that have a lot of kids. Like, and so it's like a midlife crisis. Like literally, Rob is literally hitting his midlife crisis. And he doesn't know what to do with it. Which, like, another thing I wrote down is like, Rob is an interesting. I know you have beef with Rob.
Also, call him Robert because it's confusing, because there's Rob and Robert, and Rob is named after Robert. So sorry,
Robert, King Robert, first of his name. So Rob is actually a very interesting character, dumb but interesting.
Do you mean Robert?
Robert, oh my god. Robert, King Robert, first of his name, is an interesting character, dumb but interesting. Because I know you have beef with him, with this character.
Because he's dumb.
Because he's dumb, right? And he is like a nuanced, interesting character, like for all the reasons that we discussed. Of like he's kind of stuck at his own age. Like he's kind of fooled his way into a leadership position and now doesn't know how to like actually be a leader, nor is he interested in being a leader. Like, I think if in a perfect world, he would have been like a really good general, right? Like, like leading armies, like, you know, for some king to be like, go take care of this rebellion. And he would have been like, fuck yeah, let me go smash some heads.
No, and that's what he was good at. And that's like kind of the tragedy of his character is like, he literally peaked during the rebellion because that is what he was made for. He is a guy who wants to be like out on the march with the soldiers and like, you know, my comrades in arms and like having fun and then like going and doing battle. Like that's his passion. That's where his actual skills lie. But then once that was over, you know, the roles are reversed. He's like, okay, now you never get to do that again because now you're the king and you're too important, and you now have to do all of the boring shit that you know, never excelled at, never paid much attention to, but this is your life now. Have fun.
Well, and it's also like, and it's once again, it's another political critique of a system where all you need is a popularity contest, and it's a very interesting critique of sort of like the male, like the machismo of it all in politics, which is definitely a problem right now. We're like, oh, you're so based for owning the libs, right? Like you're so macho and taking them on, and oh, look at you. Like it's the same thing with Rob, of where like he was so cool in battle and he killed so many people. It's like that doesn't make you a good king, right? You had the biggest stick, and so therefore you won. But that doesn't mean you're going to be particularly good at actually running a government or knowing how to do that. So like it's like George pointing to an inherent problem with this system of where like when you thrust power upon people who just are simply very charming or very good at one thing, which is getting power, that doesn't necessarily bode well for the system and for everybody else who is subjugated under said system. Because most of the time, they're not going to be very good at governing, nor do they have an interest in doing that.
No, and I fully agree because again the reason I like always joke when people are like, oh, this is about the quest for the pointy chair and the fight over the pointy chair. Like, no, because this series is a critique of monarchy and like systems of power, but like specifically monarchy. So this obsession with like, oh well, who's going to be the next king isn't the point, because these monarchical systems, raise up people that are not necessarily going to be any good at the job, which is why anytime, even in this fictional world, when you look at like all of the kings of the Targaryen lines and then up to like Robert and stuff, maybe if you're lucky, like a fifth of them are fine, and then most of them are either mediocre or actively causing harm, because these people have gotten this role through no merit of their own. They're just, at the right place at the right time, being born from the right person. And Robert is included in that.
Yeah, and it sort of is a nice contrast then to Dany, who like was supposed to be born of that, but then was thrust out of it, and then like literally has to prove herself, right? Like,
yeah,
and
weird, like, weird.
It's almost as if he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Some other things, because I know we probably need to wrap up, but a few more things I noticed. Is Jaime being the Warden of the East, or that being dangled, was that in the show? I don't remember that being in the show.
I honestly, I do not remember. They might have cut it. I'm going to be for real. It gets dropped very quickly, like in the books as well, because I don't think it exists beyond this book, where I'm assuming George realized like that doesn't make a ton of logical sense. So we're just going to drop it.
Great, because I clocked it. I'm like, that's weird. Another line I loved is a man cannot always be where he belongs. That was playing into our
sorry, I was gonna say Ned chapters, they drop these like gems, and they're like Ned's like internal thought, that like all these like little nuggets of wisdom, they're beautiful. And sorry, say what you were gonna say.
No, it's just it just kind of plays into the larger conversation we've been talking about, like the tragedy of Robert, like that that like he's not a bad dude necessarily, but he's kind of been thrust into this situation because of the system that he's resides in, and he can't really do the things he wants to do, which is fuck ladies and go to war.
I will say, just for the record, just so that it's on the record, I don't just hate him because he's like a dumb jock. I think part of the tragedy of Robert is that because he's so dissatisfied with how his life has turned out, he turns that dissatisfaction into abuse of the people around him. And I know people don't like Cersei, and Cersei does many monstrous things. Later on in the series, you will hear of. You'll see some of it in this book as well, but like later on, you'll hear more. Just like the different ways that Robert treated her, which I don't care how bad she is. No one needs to be treated that way. So I don't like Robert for a number of reasons. Just for anyone at home who's like, Robert's my dude. No, don't like abusive fuckheads. Okay.
Yeah. Which, playing into that, my other thing I wrote is, why did you pick Ned if you don't want to listen to him?
Because again, that's the tragedy of Robert. Like, he knows enough to know, like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, like I'm gonna be bad at this if I don't have someone who is good at this. Who is good at this that I can trust? Ned. But also Ned is going to want to make me do work. And I don't like doing work, which is why I need Ned. So it's this like, push and pull contrast. It's the irony of it all.
It's a negative feedback. Which the other, which sort of on that, one of my big notes I wrote at the end is, Ned represents old school honor and feudalism. Robert represents a more brute / mercantilistic approach to power. Like, Ned is more of sort of like the old social contract. What the French would call the ancien regime, right? The idea that like, okay, like, yes, there's people who are like lords and shit and kings, but like they have a duty to fulfill to their peasants, right? Like, there's a contract going on here of like, yes, I get to live in a nice castle and get the nice food, and I get to make decisions, but like ultimately all of these decisions should be for the betterment of the people that live under me, right? Like, there is a social contract here, that the mandate of heaven, whatever you want to call it, right? Whereas like Rob is more sort of this sort of brutalism or like mercantilistic, very sort of like transactional world, right? Of where it's like, I did this thing, so, then this should happen, right? Like I have the biggest army, so I am now in charge, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so what I say goes, as opposed to being like, well, I have a social contract and like I have a mandate from heaven or whatever, so I need to like take care of the people. Like he doesn't give a shit. Like once again, it's not because he's cruel. It's not because he's like, a bad guy necessarily. It's literally just because he looks at things in a very transactional manner, and he looks at things of like, well, I won the joust, so I won the war, so therefore I'm in charge now. Like, and so it's just an interesting contrast between their characters and sort of like their worldviews, and also interesting that they're friends, like because they have very different like approaches like to how they like, view the world, and it's interesting because they both were raised by the same guy, and they both were. But I think once again, it's the way that, like you said, like they were affected by their trauma and the way that they like internalized it. Ned was able to like figure out a way to like cope and sort of looked at it as like everything happens for a reason, all's well that ends well. Like, let's try and pick up the pieces and like make the world as best as we can. Whereas Robert's like, fuck the Targaryens. They took everything from me. Even though I literally am sitting on the pointy chair now, like I still am obsessed and I can't stop thinking about like what was stolen from me, and I'm unable to like move the fuck on. So like it's just very interesting that they're also still friends, and it's just the different ways that they internalize it. Also, Mormont's a double agent. Dun dun dun.
Oh no. Yes, that was a fun reveal in this chapter, and more evidence of Varys being very good at his job. Just really hands all over the place. How you are doing this, wild shit.
Hey, God, Varys is the hardest working motherfucker in all of us. Like
a single mom
who works two jobs. Oh he's got that shitty little like Reba wig on, like
no upper lip. Okay, and on that note, we're gonna take a break. Okay, cool.
Oh my god.
And we are back. Okay, so moving on to Tyrion II. Let's do a little recap of it. Tyrion is traveling with some members of the Night's Watch, some members of his own guard, up to the wall because he wants to see the wall, and that's going to be really fun and stuff. Along the way, he has some petty interactions with Benjen Stark. He gives one of his legendary pep talks to Jon Snow, which goes super duper well. Doesn't end with Jon Snow crying yet again, because boy, does he have a lot of feelings. And then they end being on like kind of good terms, him and Jon. It's like a sweet little relationship that like Arya and Jon, enjoy it while you can.
The first thing I wrote is Tyrion really can't win. Like everybody hates Chris and everybody hates Tyrion. It just nobody likes Tyrion. Nobody likes Tyrion.
No one likes him because of his family, because they're all fuckers. His family doesn't like him because you're like the non-conformist, I think is the most generous way of saying it, compared to the rest of them. It's very sad. Yeah, no, everyone has a reason to hate this guy, and he is just like, well, okay, I'll be sassy, I guess. This is just my thing, since y'all hate me anyway. Which
kind of goes with his whole thing that he said of like death is so final, like where he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like just like stop and give up? Like, no, I'm gonna like raise my middle finger to the world and say fuck all of you. Like yeah, I'm gonna enjoy my sweet summer wine and have a good time. Like
and it's great. I do like how he kind of how he's able to like use people's bad behavior against them. I love the little detail about like how angry Benjen is that he's traveling with them, and then because Benjen like has to faux politeness, he has to pretend, he like offers Tyrion his cloak to be like, oh, I don't know if you're warm enough there, do you need a cloak, expecting like, as most, tough men would, to be like, no, I'm fine. But Tyrion's like, yeah, no, I'll take it. Thank you. And then Benjen is freezing his ass on the entire ride up north because like, yeah, Tyrion's like, yeah, fuck around and find out. I will make you sorry for being a dick to me.
Yeah, no. Tyrion is like, this is an interesting chapter. Once again, not a lot happened, but like, It was an interesting character study. I also now see where all the stupid secret Targaryen bastard theories come about Tyrion.
Oh
It's
God.
literally just this one
Golly.
chapter, and it's because it's like you said of like it's the dragon dreams. I'm like, but it's not a dream. He's just doing a
Mhm.
thing that all kids say of like, don't you like dragons? Because
Yeah.
kids like dragons. Like they're big and they're scary and they blow fire. Like it just
Yeah. Very normal thing. Were you a dragon kid or were you an ancient Egypt kid? Like pick one, and that's your thing now.
I was a pirate kid, and
Of course you were. Pirates and trains
pirates and
because
trains, pirates. Now we're talking Sharknado, train pirates. Like,
but there were those books. Do you remember like
yeah, 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 yeah,
Egyptology
yeah.
book and then the dragonology book? Like, and then you got like you picked one. They were the two genders.
Well, no, because there was piratology too.
There was.
Yeah, there was piratology. That's the one I had.
Oh, are you like the non-binary of this metaphor?
I'm a blue haired kid. I was a blue hair. I was a blue haired Ethan. Oh my god.
Gosh.
But yeah, no, I clocked that and I'm like, that's where they all get it from. That's where they all get it from.
Mhm.
They read far too, because earlier in a few chapters, like we got our Danny dream, and then we have this guy being like, I like fire and I like looking at fire and I like dragons. And everyone's like, he must be a Targaryen. There was this funny TikTok I was watching where there was this one guy like people reading A Song of Ice and Fire with no reading comprehension, and they're like, guys, I think Waldfrey behind the Red Wedding, like. Right. It's like either A, they think picking up on like obvious parts of a plot line, they're like, I'm a fucking genius. Or it's like
Yeah.
or it's like they're building like mountains out of molehills because and it's like it's fun to theorize and it's fun to do these sorts of things, but it's like it needs to be based in something. Like
Yeah.
not
No, and that's I made a whole video about this the other day, and where I was talking about this specific theory and being like, puzzle pieces are the wrong metaphor because just because there are all these elements there and you put it together doesn't mean that that's the thing, you know. Because I think the more apt metaphor is Legos. I can take all the pieces here and I can build a thing and be like, look at it, see how I built it. But I can do that and make Winterfell, or I can make the Death Star. Like,
Yeah.
very different things. And the thing you need to ask yourself when you are considering these theories and theorizing is, okay, do all the pieces fit? Great. How does this affect the narrative? What does this have to do with the narrative? And if you can't give like a satisfying answer that doesn't have a bunch of holes in it, then you know the theory is probably bad.
Well, and it's like what does making him a secret Targaryen bastard do other than like, okay, he's
Exactly.
not. It's okay. He's not actually part of the Lannisters, and you could like make the argument of like, oh well, it's his personal arc of learning, but it's also like, but that doesn't really do anything to the larger narrative, like it because like the whole
And also
like,
undermines his arc, like literally, like, and it like gives it makes like Tywin's behavior towards him justified, which is
exactly.
yeah, which is like ridiculous because the point is that it's not justified, that it's cruel and unusual, and like how he responds to that is his own arc. And okay, no, we're getting off track.
Yeah, we're getting off track. My other note I wrote is Jon is such a teenage shithead when he corrects Tyrion. When he corrects Tyrion, he's like, because Tyrion's like, how old are you? 11? 14.
Yeah,
14 and a half.
It's so funny.
14 and a half. Yeah, it's like, what, dude?
Daddy, I'm almost grown up. Please, like, no, baby boy.
And also, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get so much flack from because I know the Jon lovers are strong and many they are legion. You know what? Fuck Jon. Like, what he does in this moment, like, fuck Jon. I'm like, you're such a little shit. The way he acts this whole scene is so shitty. I'm like, let me sick my dog on this disabled person.
Okay. Okay, you know what? Okay. I'm going to defend Jon a little bit here because I think that this was an unfortunate series of events, starting with Tyrion being a little shit because
Sure.
Tyrion, like, at this point has to recognize that Jon Snow is young and in a bit of a fragile emotional state. He has been through it very recently. And this is the second time that he's like needled him really bad. And he even says, like, as he's like giving, again, I called it one of his legendary pep talks, as he's like needling in, like, you've thrown your life away with these monsters, with all these hordes. These are your new brothers. Are you excited? Oh, your dad sent you away. Oh, I'm sure Lady Stark used to love you. Oh, I'm sure that, and he goes on, and he's like working Jon up to the point where Jon is crying. And it's only in the moment where Tyrion like realizes, like, oh, okay, I think I might have taken it too far, that he takes a step forward, like, okay, let me like back up. And that's when the dog does the thing. Not the dog, the direwolf, you know what I mean? And so like Tyrion did it. Like, oh, he felt bad, but he didn't get to say it quick enough. Like, no. Now, did Jon have a little too much fun after Tyrion dropped on his ass? Absolutely. The whole like what is he that he's like making him say, like, ask me for help or whatever?
Yeah, my Lord Stark or something like that. Like it's
yes.
It's a really shitty moment.
Yeah. Which is but also like characterization. We were just talking about like the youth and people's actions making sense. If you just bullied a 14-year-old to the point that you made him cry, and then he gets the upper hand on you, like, he's gonna gloat. And honestly, is it shitty? Yeah. Did I laugh? Yeah, because Tyrion, I think, deserved it in that moment.
Sure. I like Jon in the show, and I think that's just because what's his face is hot. They aged him up a bit, but God, I'm struggling with this 14-year-old boy with so many feelings in this series.
I think that is the point of his arc in this book, and we will witness him go on a journey where he begins in one place and he ends in another. Like a novel, like a character arc.
Almost as if George is setting something up here. Like,
yeah.
I will say, like, planting and payoff. Who would have thought? I will say the other thing that I will give props to Tyrion though in this moment is like Tyrion, like, once he realizes he's gone too far, he suddenly is very calculating again.
Yeah.
And he's immediately like, because he like makes a joke about it, and then like he makes like the Gremlin like joke, and like and he makes like that, like the way that Tyrion knows. I don't want to call it code switching, but it's like the way that like Tyrion knows in a moment of like, okay, now it's time to like play the part that people want me to play. Great, I will do that, because I literally am disabled in a medieval fantasy world and could have my head lopped off at any moment. Like,
well, it's the like outward manifestation of that like speech he gives him, where when Jon is asking him, like, why do you read so much? And it's because, well, like, all I have is my mind. So we watch him in real time use his mind to protect himself, to figure out the situation, because he doesn't have the brute strength, he doesn't have the dexterity, he can't run away. So like the only thing he can do is make these calculated moves, and it works. So it's a great way of like, you told us and then you reinforced it by showing us, and I think it's good writing.
Showing, not telling. What a world. But yeah, no, I once again, a short chapter, but like a good character study on both of these characters and we sort of see them in real time, like you said, like Tyrion's demonstrating like his worldview, and Jon's also kind of demonstrating his worldview of where he's just an emotional 14-year-old boy who's going to act on what his emotion is in the moment. And it's also kind of a nice dovetail to like the Eddard and like Robert chapter of like, once again, you have kind of two different contrasting like worldviews of, and you have it again here of where like you have Tyrion who's like, I'm gonna be cold and calculating, and like I'm going to be reactive as opposed to sort of active, and then Jon who's like, I am feeling this feeling right now, so I am going to express it, usually things that I will later regret, like, and realizing like I've gone too far, like.
Yes. Yeah, no, and it's something I like about this is we're also seeing another instance of the direwolves like weird connection with a
Yes.
Stark kid,
Yeah.
because John doesn't at least outwardly tell Ghost to like jump at Tyrion or whatever. It's Ghost is connected mentally, and Ghost feels his distress, and Ghost like responds with that same emotion because these wolves are connected to all of these kids.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So that was a nice. I clocked that as well. I'm like, oh well, he didn't even need to tell the dog sick him. The dog just knew empathically. Time to attack this tiny little man. Like,
yeah. The man has been mean to me. I must avenge my friend, a human thing
person.
In my head thing. Person. Yeah. And then I will say the other thing that I wrote down is something I love about a Tyrion chapter is just like the humor of being inside his head, like the little quips that he makes. They're so enjoyable. One of the lines I wrote down where he's kind of just like ruminating on his family history is like, my father was hand of the king. My brother later killed that king. But life is full of these little ironies. Like what, like a funny little like thing to think internally that we're all like now privy to. Just like, yes, comment on the little ironies, Tyrion, inside your head. It's fun.
And it's just, once again, like, not to bring it back to the TV show, but just like whoever the casting director was who picked Peter Dinklage to play this role deserves all of the money in the world, because I don't think you could have cast somebody better. Like, they've
talked about this. George has specifically talked about this when they were like talking about casting people. It was always Peter Dinklage, like before like casting directors or anything. Like that was who they had in mind. And someone even asked them like, well, what were you going to do if like Peter Dinklage said no? And George is like, we didn't know what we would do if he said no, so we're very grateful. Because like it's only ever been him in our mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like he's such a nuanced actor, and he understands like the humor of it. I will say Peter Dinklage does this thing that does like when he does a British accent, and I noticed it in Wicked. Because there's only his voice for this character. Like, it's the way that he pronounces his T's. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, do you know what I'm talking about? Like he like,
no, I do know he like taps them in a certain way,
and it's a very soft tap. It's like the crispy creamy cracker. It's like that. it's like that. It's like that.
Crispy creamy cracker. That's so good Trixie reference in the middle.
Yeah. But that is my one Peter Dinklage qualm, is when he does a British accent, he does that weird tapped R thing, and it's like it'll be fine, and then he gets to like a word that does, or tapped T, and like he gets to order the T at the end of it, and I'm like, there it is.
I will say I think he has a very good accent, but rewatching things like a little more recently, every once in a while I'm like, I can hear it when you slip a little bit. That's fun. That's a fun thing to notice.
Oh yeah, no, I think especially because he's like acting with like all these like titans of like British theater. And so it's like you kind of if you're sat next to like Sean Bean with his like thick northern accent, like like there's not much you can do. Like it's not. Or what's her face? Who the Queen of Thorns or something like that, right? Like
Dame Diana Rigg. Oh yeah, no, don't be British around her.
Oh my god, I saw her. She's in, once again, me bringing Doctor Who back into it. She's in it. She plays a villain in Doctor Who, and she is so good. And I was like, who is this lady? She's so good. And I'm like, because half of her face is usually covered, and she's in Game of Thrones. Anyways,
no, we stand. She's great.
But yeah, that was all my thoughts on this chapter.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. And again, like we didn't really talk about like the the advice and stuff that Tyrion gives Jon, but it's solid. Once again, it's just like, hey, be aware of the world, and you like accept things as they are, and learn to like work with what you have, than like rather than getting like hung up on what you don't, and your life will go a lot smoother. And I think Jon benefits long term from his little friendship with Tyrion here.
Yeah, and once again, Tyrion's also showing that in the moment, right? Like he's showing that, as opposed to, just talking about it. What a concept! What good writing! Good job, George. A+.
Good job, George. And on that note, let's take a little break. And we are back. So, up next, we have Catelyn III, another light chapter. Whoop-de-doo. So, let's do a little recap of Catelyn III. In it, we come back to Catlyn. We see her again at Bran's bedside, but this time from her point of view, where she is losing it. She has not slept in days. She barely eats. She comments multiple times how like she doesn't know where her mind is, and it's all very horrifying. And Robb comes in and gives her the talking to, which she needs at the moment because she's lost in her grief. She needs to be pulled out of it, and she's struggling. He tries to give her that pep talk, but oh no, the library is on fire. Runs out. And then, oh no, there is a lone man with a dagger in the room trying to off a child. Catlyn somehow miraculously fights this man off, grabbing the blade. That like still freaks me out when I watch that scene in the show, and is able to save Bran basically. And then Summer comes in and finishes the job with Dagger Man, and then everyone enters the room with the dead person, Bran and Summer, and then Catlyn laughing hysterically because she's been sleep deprived for weeks. And yeah, eventually she sleeps for 4 days. They all then have a discussion with her where she's feeling a lot better. And she's like, yeah, no, I think it's the Lannisters. I think we figured it out. So I need to go and warn Ned. So I'm going to do that. Robb, you're in charge. Have fun. And I'm out. That was really long.
It was. I will say both a lot happened and not a lot happened in this chapter. And this chapter very much reads to me like an Italian opera. Like it's very like high drama, like the whole time. Yes. A lot goes down in a very short amount of time. And it's so funny because like this, I kind of forgot the TV show during this chapter. Oh. So like I completely forgot about the assassin because like I first wrote and like I completely forgot like that she has this like 180 moment because I like had written down like, babe, you grieving, I know you grieving, but we gotta take care of business. Like, why are you doing this? And then I'm like, what was the assassin here in the TV show? And then I'm like, oh wait, no, it was like halfway through the chapter I was like, oh wait, no, this totally was. This is kind of kicks off all of the events that follow. Like so it's like no, I was and it was I was like and then when it got to her like suddenly like taking charge again, I'm like she's back, baby. Like we're so back. I will say the thing I love is the symbolism of the wolves crying, like driving her mad and being like, please close the windows, the wolves. Like once again, Italian fucking opera. Like and then the planting and payoff of like the wolf is the one that like ends up saving the child, and then like it just like sits like I love the imagery. It goes and plops on his bed, and then like when she finally comes to, she's like, "Where's the wolf? Oh, it's with Bran. Good." Like
keep the damn wolf there. I was wrong.
I was very wrong. This wolf is important. I realize northern magic gods bullshit with the direwolves. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I won't do that again. Like some good planting and payoff, George, in this chapter. It's a very good example of planting and payoff, like in the chapter of just like the wolves, they drive me mad, and the wolves save the day. Thank you, wolves. Oh yeah.
But no, I agree. I think it's very well done. And I think this chapter is just like very well done on a number of fronts. Again, I think the portrayal of grief and like out of your mind grief is so good and rings so true. And I won't argue with it because like I have been in that state, and where like you are physically unwell, and you get so like tunnel visiony because you can't process like your own grief, and so the people around you, it's so hard to like include them in like the calculations of your scatterbrained mind. So I really appreciated like that portrayal, and then like I think it's a really sweet scene when like Robb comes in and is like trying to help her and pull her out, and then you're like seeing that like, oh, he's also a child. This is the thing that we keep forgetting, that all of these like teenagers are like trying to act like adults, but then they like break for a moment, and it's heartbreaking. And that being the thing that like really starts to break through to her, I was appreciative. of just that just like whole setup. I think that was like a necessary thing to like remind us of like Rob, how old these characters are, and the just like the messiness of the situation.
Yeah. Well, it's like I also wrote down like Catelyn's growth is impressive because I was afraid, oh, she's about to regress even further now that her fears of leaving Bran's side have been proven. Because she goes on and like, well, what if something happens? What if he dies while I'm gone? Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, well, the one moment where people left and it was just you, there was literally an assassin that tried to kill your child. Like your worst fears are realized.
Uh-huh.
And so like there could have been a world where like Catlyn goes full Lady Aaron, right? Like I am not leaving my child side.
Lysa.
Like I'm going full Lysa. I am losing my goddamn mind. Like grief, it has racked me, but she chooses not to, which I think is like a credit to her character of like she finally realized. Well, one, she sleeps for 3 days, which girl, same.
Yeah, she needed
like girl, she needed it, and it's like she finally is able to like come to, and when she has like some clarity of mind, she's like, oh, I gotta take care of shit. Like, and then like I love the moment where she realizes like I'm the one who has to go. Like no one will suspect me of anything. Like I have to go, and I have to go, and we have to beat them to the capital. like, so like I will go even though I am literally wounded. And everyone's like, hey, maybe you should heal first. She's like, no time. like
no time. We gotta get going. Time is of the essence. Okay.
I know literally 3 days ago, I was like, I shall not leave this bedside. She's like, how about we gallop halfway across the country off of the main road, off of the beaten path with just one knight protecting me to go and deliver a message because my husband doesn't speak the secret language that me and my bestie made up. We were in college together. Like,
oh, I should have taught him. Our code.
Our weird code. Now put that box in a box. Now put that box in another box. Yeah, no, but but it shows like she's a mature woman who once she like realizes what needs to be done, she takes care of business. So
yeah. No, and I love that like final like meeting scene for that reason, because like we watch that like, oh, once you like take care of your like physical and mental needs for a second, people do better, but it's hard to remember that when you're in the throes of grief. But like once it happens and she's in control again, the way she reestablishes control, divvies out all these roles, and then also I think in a very smart way like elevates Rob as well, like helping him build up his confidence so that he can really take the reins on his end. It's just like classic Catlyn, and I love it. I enjoy watching her like in her element, being like, okay, here's the plan, folks. We got to do shit. And I also will say in that scene, we also get one of, at least in this book, I'm about to shit on Theon a little bit, but normally I don't like Theon in this book. But I will say the one Theon moment I love in this particular book is when she's like, oh, I think Jaime threw Bran out the window. And Roderick is like, the Kingslayer wouldn't hurt a child. And Theon goes, he wouldn't? And I'm like, Theon, that's it. That's the energy we like. Keep it to that, and we'll like you more in this book. We'll like him better later. But anyway, you got my point.
Yeah, I did clock that. That was so funny. I also love it's very like Theon, very once again, 14-year-old boy being like, my family owes.
He's a little older. He's like 19. Sorry.
Oh, okay. My family owes you a great debt, my lady. Right, like all that bullshit. And I'm like, okay, calm down there. Like, if we need the Vikings, we'll let you know. Like,
yeah. Just chill for a moment, okay?
Like,
and then bring it back to the moment you talked about earlier, which was also one of my notes. The moment where like Rob pulls out his sword in the middle of the meeting because he's so filled with rage and emotion, and Roderick immediately shuts that shit down. Like, boy, I taught you not to pull that out unless you were using it. Sit down and focus on your feelings inward, okay? Put that away, damn it.
And then I love, because once again, Catlyn is not Ned, and she's like, you gave this 14-year-old boy a sword? Like,
yeah. Like,
and he's like,
well, I thought it was about time.
And she's like, you gave the 14-year-old child a sword?
But then she eventually agrees with it, and she's like, okay, yeah, no, you're probably right, but still, like, Rob, don't make us regret this. Sit down. I will empower you, but only to a degree here. You need to act like the adults.
Keep the weapon sheathed during a conversation, please.
Dude.
I will also say, George's obsession with food. She's back.
She back, baby.
She back. Which I do love this detail because like this is a good use of George's use of food, because it's a small detail of like she's like, just give me some bread and something to like munch on, and they're like, here is a full meal because you haven't eaten for days. Please.
Also, it's not just this chapter. We didn't mention it earlier, but the Tyrion chapter, it's the same thing. He goes on and on about that damn squirrel stew and like all the things that go. And then Tyrion tastes the stew. Is like, the seasoning isn't quite right. More pepper, please. Like,
I did catch that, George. I'm telling you, she gets hungry because she takes forever to write. She takes all day to write like 5 paragraphs, and then she gets to a point and she's hungry because it's lunchtime, and she's like, I need a fucking sandwich. And then that's when she knows it's time to stop writing. Which is, I say that 'cause that's how I write too. When I get hungry, or I need to go to the bathroom finally, I'm like, okay, it's time to stop writing because I need to go and eat a sandwich. Oh, Georgie. Oh, Georgie. Oh, Georgie. But yeah, no, it's so funny because like more happened in this chapter plot wise than the other 2 chapters. Like, because in the other 2 chapters, we get like a little bit of information both times, and then some competing worldviews in debate style. And oh God, what's the name of the guy who wrote Jurassic Park?
Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton, very Michael Crichton of him to have sort of like competing worldviews debated in these scenes with lots of dialogue. But then we get like a really like action-packed sequence, and then like it's also funny because like you get like a really interesting insight into Catlyn, character of like, once again, like she has like a very nice arc, and it's a very nice planting and payoff within the chapter of like, it's time to get shit done. Like, we got
to get the plot going once more. Thank you very much, everybody.
Well, and she even has like a line, like she's like, I'm so embarrassed that I let them see me at my weakest state, and she has a line like, I will show these Northerners like how strong a Tully can be, right? Like, it was a nice, which it's like her recognizing like these people are tough as shit. Like I need to step my pussy up, right? Like I need to.
Yes. Yeah. It's time to hunty down that runway, girl. And boots the house down.
You better work. Category is
yes.
Grief realness.
Okay, I think this is a good transition moment to deaths this week. What was your favorite death, Spices? So many to choose from, and I'm gonna force this fucking segment every week because I made a dumb joke.
It's a great joke. It's a great no, I mean, once again, our nameless dagger man. Dagger man. So sad. Yeah. Who smelled like shit. I do love that detail of where they're like, he smelled like we found his living space in the stables.
Like, that checks out. That checks out. Yeah, no, that's all I could think about when I was dying, actually. Oh my gosh. Okay, no. Sure. I'm gonna go with a unique choice, actually. I'm gonna go with the squirrel from the squirrel stew. Because like that squirrel didn't deserve that. And then they didn't even like season it correctly at first. Like Tyrion had to be the one to like correct it. Like if you're gonna off me and make me into a stew, like at least like nail it from the get-go. I don't want to have like some dude have to come in and be like, hey, you fucked up. So that's my chosen death. Thank you.
I did clock that. I'm like, oh, Rhani's gonna hate the fact that this stew is underseasoned. He's gonna be so mad.
More pepper, damn it. But okay, so I think that's all we got for the week. Please remember, next week our chapters are Sansa I, Eddard III, and Bran III. Please remember to find us on all our socials, like and subscribe, write a review, do one of the things. I don't know, it helps with algorithm crap.
Leave all the comments. Fight in the comments. Fight.
Argue with each other, but don't be sexist because I'll probably delete them. So yeah. Okay, but yeah. Okay, everyone, have a great week. We'll see you next Monday. Bye.
Bye.